I didn't feel like I was enough.
Yeah.
And I thought that if I performed, if I accomplished, then at some point I would arrive at finally being enough.
Yet some point there seems to be a crack in this armor that you built, that you started to think and feel differently about this investment banking world.
Realized that it didn't matter how big the trophies are or how full the cabinet was. It was never going to be enough. Something in particular in the relationship, I wasn't investing enough in the relationship because there was nothing in my life except for putting trophies in the case. So that was a clear signal that my attention was misallocated in some way.
This week on the U Potential podcast, I sit down with Adam Luchini, a former Wall Street investment banker who walked away from it all: the trophy case, the status, the salary, and he moved his family to Mexico, where he built a highly successful company called Thirdsy on his own terms. This conversation, it's about achievement and identity, and understanding when success, as we know it, stops answering the questions that we thought it would. This conversation is about enough and what is enough, something I think we all struggle with at times. If you've been enjoying these conversations, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you leave us a review, we'd love it. And now, I hope you enjoy this conversation with Adam Luchini. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Sean.
I'm excited to have a conversation with you about your journey, the path you've taken, the company you're building. But first, when people see your bio on LinkedIn, they might think, what the fuck did you do? Leaving Wall Street for strollers is what it says.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, something went drastically wrong there, right?
Or good.
Yeah. No, it was an intentional move. I worked in IB for a long time. I worked on Wall Street for about 13 years, so just shy of 15. And I worked as an engineer before that. So, super driven, accomplishment driven, title driven. And, over time, I sought to get on a different path.
And I think that getting onto a different path, when I was hearing about your story, is a good theme for today, is getting on that different path. All of us, we're born, we get socially molded to think, feel, and look at success a certain way, and we follow those paths. But it seems like for yourself, there's these moments, these breadcrumbs perhaps, that had you starting to see life in a different way. And I open up tongue-in-cheek saying that because I think that's what I find fascinating about your story. I want to go way back to before investment banking days, when a younger Adam, can you, with hindsight, which is nice, see seeds that were starting to be planted as to why you decided to pursue this investment banking career?
Oh, absolutely. Like easy. I came from, I grew up in Toronto. I grew up in an area of the city that, wasn't known to raise or produce a lot of world beaters. Good people, but
Sorry, I'm not from Toronto. World beaters.
Yeah, it's just the best and brightest in a given field, or doing something that of acclaim, like something that people aspire to. I was an insecure kid. I was just an insecure kid, and I'm gonna go like way back. It was one of my grade school teachers pulled me aside midway through. I think it was grade 7. And she said to me, Adam, you're a bright guy. You're capable of more. Like, you should try applying yourself a little bit. And I don't know what it was about that teacher. I wanted her approval. I wanted her to like me. I really liked her, and it hit me the right way. And overnight, I went from straight B's to straight A pluses. Literally overnight, it just changed a gear, and I started trying. And what I discovered when you try is that I was capable of results that I didn't think I was capable of, and it became addictive. And I was gonna try, and then I went on to a private high school in Toronto, and then when I finished up there, I tried at the next hardest thing, and for me that was engineering. I went to University of Toronto and I did an engineering degree, and I tried, and when I first got there, I was like in over my head a little bit. I was good enough to get in and good enough to survive, but When I first got there, I was kind of middle of the pack, and I graduated 6th in my class, which isn't, it was a class of 60, so it's top 10%.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not world beater status, but it was hard for me. It was hard for me. Like I was smart enough to do that. So at any rate, you fast forward, and I just tried my way into the hardest paths over and over again. And I think you might say, well, what's next, right? You start to discover after a while that all of these, like piling up these wins, like look at all my wins, look at them all,
Yeah.
like how great I am.
Trophy case.
The trophy, yeah, yeah. Look at the trophy case. The trophy case, like it doesn't matter how full the trophy case is, it doesn't really address the issue. Like why do you need to pile up these wins? Why do you need to fill the trophy case? Um, and I started really asking myself that question, and that was why eventually I traded in filling the trophy case for stroller walks, as you alluded to at the top.
You touch on something I think just universally true for so many of us is that we have these like flash points, these like emotionally driven points in grade 7. It was interesting how you said, I think, no, it was grade 7.
I know,
Like it's etched into our mind.
For the moment, yeah.
We all have those. And I find it fascinating how in hindsight we can go back and kind of piece together the dots. You said that you were trying to get her for approval. What do you think the inside of you was searching for? Is it validation, or were you fearful not to be accepted by the in-group or these world status people you speak of?
Yeah, I don't think it was like I didn't have any inkling of what world status was. I
Yeah.
just knew that I didn't feel like I was enough.
Yeah.
And I thought that if I performed, if I accomplished,
Yeah.
then at some point I would arrive at finally being enough.
Mm-hmm.
And you start piling them up, and then you realize that, and in my days on Wall Street, I got to know some really senior people, whether it was on the client side or on the sell side. And you get to know people who have had a lot more trophies in their trophy case than I did. And they suffered from the exact same issues I did. And I realized that it didn't matter how big the trophies are or how full the cabinet was. It was never going to be enough. There was a different issue there. And it was exactly what you're like going to, like what was driving this issue when you were, a 13 or 12-year-old boy.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if you're 32, 52, 62. If you don't ever, slay that dragon, there's always going to be it casts a big shadow. You're always going to be in the darkness of it.
Yeah, this idea of shadow. Carl Jung often talks about the shadow self, and it influences. It's like a script that's imprinted on us. I'm making an assumption here, but Luchini, the last name, Italian?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
I find that these shadows, these scripts that we have, they're heavily influenced by our cultures, our families, our neighborhoods, the people we surround ourselves with. Italians, to me, they're very outgoing and driven individuals. It seems like I could be completely wrong on here. When you look at like the surrounding cast around the script that was created for you, culture, maybe the Italian heritage, did this have any hand, do you think, at giving you the script that you had?
Absolutely, it did. We're all products of our environment in some way, right? And it's interesting that you say Luchini. Well, tell me about this Luchini-ness. It's actually Luchini. So you touched on
My apologies.
No. This is the point. I say Luchini. My whole family says Luchini.
The
reason we say Luchini is because my father, when he moved to Canada, when he was about 6 or 7 years old, he learned that being Italian in Canada then wasn't like being Italian in Canada today. And perhaps he was not a proud Italian, and he sought to become more Canadianized or Americanized. And so he changed the pronunciation of the name from the traditional Luchini to something that was easier for his friends Kevin and Andrew to say, because Luchini. Maybe he should have changed it to Lucky and made it gone full. Or, and he also, he married a very sort of like Canadian woman. My mother's name was Rosalind Arnold. She comes from Scottish, French Canadian heritage. Hot dogs, craft dinner, roast beef dinners on
no homemade
evenings. No. She does a very good impression of Italian cooking now. But I think I learned that being who you truly were, was something to be made up for in some way. And I think that is part of my origin story. It's just driven me to accomplish the the modest, the modest trophies in my trophy case were largely attributable to, trying to live down who I am in some ways.
What do you mean live down?
Yeah, I learned that in some ways I was fundamentally not enough. I
Mm,
learned that from my household. I
mhm.
learned that from my parents with all the best of intentions. They
Yeah,
wanted me to be more. They wanted
yeah.
they wanted themselves to
They
be more
came
in
over
some.
the seas to
Yeah,
create this, like
exactly. And there's a traditional, prototypical immigrant story, and
mhm,
it can take different flavors, but the flavor that I grew up with was be more.
mhm,
Don't be the lowest common denominator. You push to accomplish more, to be more. And it wasn't that necessarily that my parents also weren't, world beaters. My mom was a grade school teacher, and my dad climbed telephone poles for Bell Canada. But the lesson that they did implicitly teach me was, um, unfortunately and fortunately, that what you are inherently, it's not enough. You got to keep
mhm,
pushing.
mhm,
And I think that was for them a demon, and you know generational trauma. Like I've been able to have a certain flavor of problems that I'm able to like step above the fray a little bit and go,
mhm.
oh, this thing is actually
Yeah,
it's two-sided.
yeah,
There is a shadow, as you say, to
yeah.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
But yet there's also I could be off here. Luchini, I think it means light when I was looking up in Italian. A light side.
I
Who knows?
wish I knew.
Yeah. But I appreciate that. I love a good family story, like an immigrant story, and like many, it just my family heritage is Ukrainian, and coming over to Alberta, um, promised a certain amount of farmland that was not there. It was
Mm.
forests, so that creates this distrust and a frugality, and it really informs us. And I do see it as this like light and dark. Like it to you even it fueled you with, I guess, the ability to achieve.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a point where you came to a recognition like, I got to recalibrate, reorientate myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. Yeah. I mean, I think we've chatted about this before. Alex Hermosi talks about like sort of his demons and what has fueled him over time. And he calls it like coal, like dirty fuel. Like
Mhm.
you can build up a big, good head of steam running on dirty fuel, but it has a cost.
Mm.
There's a byproduct, and it can be, damaging relationships. It can be your internal environment, your mental health, etc. Um, and ultimately perhaps pursuing the wrong things, the wrong goals, like false
Mhm.
gods. So I think about that way of framing it frequently
Mhm.
when I think about like what drives me,
Mm.
and what has driven me.
Well, this coal, this dirty coal burning,
Yeah.
I understand out of a class of 25 investment banker recruits, there weren't too many standing. I'm curious from like a technical knowledge, you obviously have to have a certain degree, but the psychological aspect of that world, what kept you continuously pumping that dirty coal when so many people were tapping out?
Yeah. Yeah, you nailed it. That's not unusual for, a big class of incoming
Yeah.
new analysts and associates who are driven hard. Like, and it'd be no different if it was management consulting or,
Hmm.
new law associates. They all go through the meat grinder, right? So in investment banking, yeah, I started with a big class at my when I started on Bay Street, and within a couple of years, I was, last man standing. And like you say, like everybody's virtually all of them are technically competent. They go through a pretty rigorous filter. Um, but the difference maker is the folks who want it bad enough, and it doesn't matter whether you're running on, like hydroelectric or coal. I was running on coal for sure, but there's some folks uh, there who, whether they were in my class or not, they absolutely loved what they did. And
Hmm.
they're incredible professionals. And I learned a ton from really smart, driven, some of them even balanced people. They're like good people there. I was trying to, again, like live it down, like trying to prove that I was enough. I came from
Hmm.
an area of the city that didn't send a lot of kids to private high school. And so, rubbing shoulders with kids from back, they come from means, they come
Hmm.
from well-bred families. My dad climbed telephone poles. So I was always trying to prove that I was something that I wasn't. And that never ceased, even when I got into IB. And so when I got there, I came from kind of an unconventional background. I was doing my MBA part-time instead of full-time. It wasn't a rifle shot. I knew that I needed to get into investment banking. I did my undergrad or MBA in order to enter that stream. I actually I was coming close to finishing my MBA, and I knew that I needed to do the next hardest thing. I understood the next hardest thing to be investment banking. And I quickly figured out how to become an investment banker. Like, how do you ace the interviews? How do you do the requisite amount of coffee dates and that kind of thing, like very quickly. And anyway, I think I'm getting a little off topic. What kept me there was the desire, and I should say the fear. It's not the desire, the fear of failure, the fear of not being enough, the fear of the thing that I wanted so desperately not to be true, which was I wasn't good enough. I didn't actually belong. I wasn't as good as, my classmates, whether it was in my MBA, my engineering degree, my undergrad at the fancy school. I was always trying to prove that suspicion, that fear, that doubt, to be invalid. And that's what kept me there. That's what kept me there till 3 a.m, night after night after night, grinding through the work that needed.
3 a.m.
Oh yeah. Yeah. When I first started, I lost 30 pounds between August and Christmas. And so, like, I live in Toronto. My family lives in Toronto, but I finally emerged at Christmas time so that they could see me again, because I was just up to my eyeballs on this incredibly steep learning curve.
No, you did. And you speak to another truth that we all have, is this like inner self, this inner critic that is like, be more. You're not enough. You're not enough. Encouraging us or influence us to stay there until 3 a.m. It's strong. It feels real, hey? Yet some point there seems to be a crack in this armor that you've built, that you started to think and feel differently about this investment banking world. Do you recall when you first, I don't know if it's surrendering to that feeling that, whoa, maybe my ship is cruising in the wrong direction?
Yeah, I don't know. I've got this anecdote about grade 7, but I don't have no, there wasn't a crystallizing moment where something shifted in me, but it was definitely, I changed who I was and where I was aiming over time. And certainly as I got more senior in that career, I started to, not only continue to be a little bit dissatisfied with myself, this discontentment that I'm describing that was always there. And I knew on paper, like, I've got all the accolades, I'm successful, I'm moving in the right direction, I'm being groomed to continue to move, and still don't feel the way I wish I did. So that was one of the canaries in the coal mine. I had a relationship breakdown. My first marriage ended when I was a vice president in investment banking. So I was sort of mid-level. BP sounds important, or mid-level at
Don't they give you these titles so you
sound important.
Yeah,
That's right.
keep
So
going.
VP, then director,
Yeah.
then managing director. So at any rate,
VP, director, managing director, associate managing director.
yeah. So I was sort of mid-level in my career, and that was a massive signal that the balance of energies in my life was unbalanced. It was not, this wasn't an issue where I could, like, point at something in particular in the relationship. I wasn't investing enough in the relationship because there was nothing in my life except for putting trophies in the case. And I had 2 children at the time. So that was a clear signal that my attention was misallocated in some way. And there was no just changing, like, oh, I guess I got to spend more time on relationships. Why don't you want to spend more time on your relationships was the question that it posed. And, that presented a whole area of inquiry, exploration, understanding, growth, dare I say improvement, change, certainly.
What did you start to see when you started exploring that?
Well, these things, this catalyzing grade 7 moment.
Yeah.
All of a sudden that like snapped into place. No, I should say all of a sudden. It was gradual. It took years of work with journaling, men's groups, did some therapy, chatted more with my family, with my mother, chatted with my friends more openly, and started learning about people, including myself, because up until then I was pretty illiterate when it came to emotions, people, motivations, and I started to learn about people, and that really helped inform my understanding of me.
Oh, yeah. You make me feel like this thing with emotions. I remember one time someone asked me, like, how are you feeling? I'm like, I think I'm feeling pretty good. Like, that's not an emotion. Like, I feel happy. Or I don't know. I couldn't even name an emotion because, I never got taught that in business school.
Yeah.
Your emotions, but they fed on them. You talked about fear, and I find fear incredibly fascinating. It's perhaps the single greatest survival mechanisms humans have ever had. It made us like the dominant species in the world, that we felt fear and we ran from predators back in the day. We didn't walk on skinny branches and fall down. So like it really is like one of our strongest survival mechanisms. But for many of us, it's paralyzing in the modern day world.
Sure.
When you look back at that time, the marriage is breaking down. The trophies just probably aren't feeling as satisfying as you stack them up. What do you think you were fearing the most before you made that change? And what, if anything at all, did you get wrong about that fear?
That's a great question. It's the culture that I surrounded myself in was not, and this isn't a slag on my, the place I was at, the employer. It's just a function of the industry. In any of these high performing industries, you work at a big accounting firm, whatever, they're very judgmental, right? It's
Not very compassionate?
not very compassionate, to say the least.
That's not one of the values on the wall?
It might be on the wall. That's not the way to live, right? And so I thought a lot about what my colleagues would think, whether they said it out loud or not. But I heard what was said, the intent behind the words, the sentiment around people who are no longer there, whether they left of their own accord or otherwise. And it wasn't always the most compassionate, as you say, right?
Yeah.
And it's a little bit self-serving for the people that are still there. They couldn't hack it, or I guess it wasn't for them, with a, kind of a snide look. And so I feared what my colleagues would say, because Sean, I was looking to get their approval, right? We talked about that. I was looking to belong among, these peers that I aspired to be like. They came from the right backgrounds, the right schools, the right families, the right social networks, and I wanted to belong there. And I feared what they would think and say about me if I was found lacking. Yeah.
This idea of belonging, I just had a Dr. Zach Mercario. He wrote a book on mattering, and he's deeply studying like the significance of feeling like you matter in a group. And it builds off of this belonging. Like, it's a basic psychological need that we need to belong to our group. Our tribe, exactly. This is from our evolutionary days. But his work went deeper. It's like there's an idea of feeling like you belong, like what you did there. You want to feel belong, but mattering is that you matter so much to that group that if you're not there, they're substantially worse off, or they miss you. I'm hearing that perhaps there's this longing for like a mattering, and like while you belonged there, or you felt like you belonged there, perhaps the mattering is what really misses in some of these ecosystems.
That was interesting. I've never thought about it in that way. And I think you're hitting on something. As I got to be a little bit more senior in the business, and I started to seek to make changes where I thought I could make things better. It's a big bureaucratic organization, and there's a lot invested in keeping things the same. Rightfully so. They get a lot right, and the brand, the reputation, the things that they do well, they have to maintain. So when you're seeking to be a champion for change and it's being resisted, and it doesn't matter if you're right or not.
Yeah.
You maybe you get it done, maybe you don't, and whether you're right maybe it matters less than you hope. And so that mattering
Yeah.
was a struggle for me as I got a little bit more senior. I was looking around going, oh, I know how to make this a little bit better.
Yeah.
And it wasn't met with a lot of enthusiasm, the kind of enthusiasm that I got this great idea, what I could do. And people were like, please do not do that.
Yeah.
So I felt like I mattered a little less than I hoped I would when I was approaching those kinds of things. Yeah.
I find it so interesting. Like, it's a really fascinating concept to me because often organizations, they like, you belong, but you don't matter in the sense I can replace you with someone else. Like, if you're not playing the game, boom, next, next up. Whereas we've all been in places where we like truly matter, even if like our brain didn't understand that concept, but you can feel it. And, it's more resident. You're just more engaged with the group that you're with.
Yeah, I like that.
So, okay, I really appreciate you going through this arc. We talked a little bit before about the hero's journey, and I think it's such a good concept. And here you are, there's this big calling, and eventually you make a decision. Maybe take us back to the day that you quit. What did that look like?
I'm going to disabuse you of the idea that I quit. I didn't quit.
Okay.
Which
LinkedIn didn't say if you quit or not, so that's where I get my data from.
There were a lot of changes in the organization. We had gone through a massive merger with another investment bank within a couple weeks of me leaving, and I became redundant as a result.
Oh, there's that mattering. Hey, redundant. Boom.
Yeah. Which turned out to be fine because I had been building this, this business that I stepped into, on the side for 2 years before I left, because the intent was I wanted to make the final leap from director to managing director and moonwalk out the door on a high note.
Can you actually moonwalk?
A little bit. Okay. We'll go over that later. Yeah, I can moonwalk a little bit. But at any rate, I want to leave on the best possible note, in sort of in all respects, right? I want to win with another trophy in the case. Just because I wanted the best possible job I could.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted that final trophy, sure. And it didn't work out that way, and that's fine. But we can talk about. I think your question was around, the moment or what precipitated this big change. Yeah. So over time, I think one of the big things was COVID. COVID happened, and I me, like everybody else in the world, did a lot of introspection, did a lot of thinking during COVID.
Yeah.
Where's my life going? Am I getting divorced? Like, people made big life changes during COVID. And one of the things that both my wife and I at the time, we thought we were being smart, and we ran to Home Depot and bought folding tables like 2 weeks in. We're like, we're going to get these folding tables and we're going to be all set up. And we, like, 6 months later, we're like, oh my God, I'm working at a full. It's awful. And, part of what we were observed was we were clacking away at our computers, working our tails off, building enterprise value for somebody that wasn't us. And we really recognized during that time that we weren't building anything that worked while we weren't on the clock. We weren't building an enterprise. We weren't building any equity. We were building bigger T4s, which is fine, right? Like, there's a lot of family security, economic security. A lot of good comes from secure employment. But we recognized that what we really wanted was to be the stewards of our own destiny. We wanted something we could build for ourselves. And that's when we started the idea of, like, we need to think about building a business of some sort. And so we were very methodical about researching what kind of business we wanted to be in. What itch do we have that we could scratch where we can actually add value to the world? And that's when we launched. I shouldn't even say we launched. We started doing research into something we could bring to market. And my wife worked on it on her own for about a year and a half or 2 years before I ever joined the business.
And this is your new wife, or not new? Your
my current wife.
Current wife. There's the word.
Yeah,
your current wife. Okay,
current and permanent wife.
Yes. And then eventually it was like, see you later.
Yeah.
To the investment banking.
Yeah. And so I was, if I hadn't been made redundant, I was on the clock anyhow. It would have been within months that I was going to be at the door anyhow.
Okay. So then you're working on this company. You moved to Mexico? Is that right away?
Yeah, moved to Mexico. So working on the company. So left the investment banking role, moved to Mexico, or started working full time on this business. And what we realized, of course, was we don't have a T4 anymore. We don't necessarily have to live in an incredibly expensive city to live in, which is Toronto. Um, so what are the ways that we can ensure that we're successful in this new business, and what are the ways that we can live the kind of life that we want to live? And so one of the things that I used to hear a ton from, and I still hear a ton from, former clients and colleagues was, oh, I'd love to start my own thing. And the next question is usually something about money, or the next, in their Rolodex of reasons they can't do it, it's something about money. And one of the things that I learned in investment banking was everybody is susceptible to this. Like all of my colleagues had these immense burns, and clients had these big burns, because your lifestyle just expands as you earn more and more. Like your salary goes up by $25,000 or $30,000 or $100,000. And guess what happens? Your burn goes up by almost exactly that amount.
I just want to make a comment. The fear in humans is a great survival mechanism. Habituation, getting used to our external circumstances, like increase in salaries, another great human survival mechanisms. Like when the weather got bad in the caves, we just got used to it, and so the income goes up. We just get used to it.
Yeah. The water gets a little warmer.
The boy gets a little more cozy.
Yeah.
Get warm towels.
And part of that is, it's not just that like you're just, a boiling frog. Part of it is like, we're social creatures, right? We're all like striving for status.
Yeah.
So you trade in your Infinity for a BMW, or your BMW for, whatever, the, it's just something fancier, a Bentley or something. I never got to Bentley.
Which
Had to. BMW. Okay, great. I see a lot of BMWs. They're awesome. But at any rate, nobody wants to cut back. Nobody wants to make any concessions. They want to order the lifestyle they want on Amazon and have it delivered to their front door. Oh, I'd love to do that. Are you sure you want to spend 3 years building a business? Because it's hard. It's hard. So anyway, I think I'm getting a little off track.
No.
Hi, it's Sean. I know I'm breaking into the conversation just for a moment. There's good reason. If you're here, it means you care about living with more purpose, more meaning, and deeper connection. And that's exactly what the You Potential podcast is all about. When you hit that subscribe button, conversations like this, the ones that challenge you to think differently and open to new possibilities, keep showing up to you every week. And when you share this episode with someone you care, you're not just passing along a podcast. You're giving them a chance to reflect, to grow, and maybe even to reimagine what a good life can look like for them. So please take a second, subscribe, share it with a friend. Let's spread the conversations that truly matter. Now back to the show.
How, this grade 7 seed moment, I want to be enough. I want to be seen, heard, valued. How did you shut that off, or how did you wrestle or dance with it when you start a new company when there's no clock? Like the hours could be infinity.
Oh man. Well, so again, there's two sides, right? There's the light side, the shadow side of this like fear, this desire, this insecurity of not being enough. And, I'd wrestled it so that it no longer was this, unmitigated force that just led me around by the nose. And so it didn't, that fear of not being enough, it doesn't have the same control over me as it once did, but it still drives me to not fail, to to be the man, be the person that that I aspire to be. And it's not so much from trying to be like this crowd or these folks, as opposed to being my vision of what a good person, man is, who the character is having the character that I want to have.
Right.
So, going into business, the way that it served me was I learned through burning that coal for, 35 years, that good things happen when you're prepared, you work hard, you're diligent, you do what you say you're going to do, you're reliable. And so, the day that I became redundant, by I think I got the call at like 10:30 in the morning. By 1:30, I was at my desk working on this new business.
Nice.
So it's never been it wasn't like, oh my God, I get,
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was like, I get to do what I want to do.
Yeah,
This is great. This is wonderful. Yeah. So I wake up every day and I bounce to my desk and I get to work on the problems I like to work on because it's not, there's no, there's no tail wagging the dog anymore at the church.
You said a couple things there. You're like, I want to be the man that I want to be. I get to work on the things that I want to work on. And it makes me think like, this origin story of yours we're talking about. And again, we all have our own. It's similar to this fear concept. It has a double-sided. Fear could be really good for us or it could be really bad. The desire that you had and the work ethic, obviously, that you had when it's for the things you want. I mean, it sounds like it's incredibly useful, but it's not, someone else telling you what to do. And I feel like you hit on something important there, is that this is baked into us. We all have our own version. And like you said, you never get rid of it, but it sounds like you're now been able to channel it towards things that you want. And the way you were talking, your eyes just lit up. So it seems like you like it.
Yeah, I certainly do. And you know what? Like I've been able to meet a lot of entrepreneurs over the last several years that I've been doing this. And the truth is most of them need a boss. They didn't want a boss, but they need one.
Right.
They need a boss to adjudicate where they should be spending their time. They need a boss to keep them at their desk instead of kite surfing on Tuesday afternoons at 3 p.m. And I don't. And working in a structured, rigid corporate environment for so long taught me what happens when you apply yourself doggedly in a single direction for a long period of time. You show up, you're accountable, you're prepared, all that stuff. I don't need the guardrails that a corporate environment used to provide to me. I just don't need that any longer. So now I can set the direction and work doggedly towards the stars that I point myself towards.
I like that. The stars you point yourself towards, and then, you can just get going, get to work when it's your own direction.
Yeah.
And it just sounds like you're designing this life that, you want to live.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether it's Mexico or...
Yeah, we didn't get into that as much. We talked about cutting the burn, but that's definitely part of it, is living in a jurisdiction where the cost of living is lower. But also it meets all of these other criteria. So not only is it less expensive than living in a big metropolitan city in Western Europe, Canada, the US, it affords a beautiful, beautiful lifestyle.
You talk about these C's. You have 6 of them.
Yeah.
As we're talking about lifestyle design. What is it about these 6 C's that you decided to implement as you created this next chapter of your life?
Yeah. So my wife and I were talking about where resonates for us. Where do you get off the plane? You're like, oh, this is the right place for me. And we came up with all the criteria, like what are those axes that you're playing with? Because not everywhere's perfect. You can't have a 10 out of 10 on everything. There's always trade-offs, right? And so we came up with this like pithy 6 C's. So I'll definitely forget some of them, but I'll go through them really quickly. Convenience, cuisine, culture, climate, community, and cost. And cost is, I remember that, shockingly. And cost is obviously last because they usually come as a trade-off of the other 5 things that folks are seeking to optimize. So, some of those are like really obvious, like cuisine. Like, do you like the food? Can you get the kind of food that you feel best consuming, right? Whether that's energetically or sensationally, however you say that. But some of them are a little less obvious, like climate. Climate isn't just about like, is it sunny? Is it warm? It's also about like is it a mountainous environment? What is the vegetation like? Does this feel like the kind of place that brings out your best? Are you excited to meet the day each and every day? So the climate's not just, is it the beach? Is it, is there snow on the ground? Another one is culture. When people think about culture, they think like, oh, they're museums. The truth is, like, you go to a museum once or twice a year at most, at least in my house. And it's more about like, how do the people move about the world? Is it a low trust society? Is it a high trust society? Are people considerate? Are they conscientious? That's the culture that you can feel day to day. Do people do things well? Do they take pride in how they sweep a floor to how they prepare for an income statement? You know what I mean? It's all those little things about how people move about the world. Community is really important. It's not just about, is there a community center or is there a school nearby? It's about, can you find your tribe there? People who have the same values as you. Can you find common interests, common ground with the people there? So like I lived in Playa del Carmen for a little bit, for instance, which was another area of Mexico where there's a lot of expats. And it's a nice place. There's a lot of people that visit there and love it. There's a lot of people that live there and love it. But for me, it didn't have the right vibe. It didn't have the right, I didn't find community there.
I feel like you might be 20 years too young for that.
I think I might be 20 years too old.
Oh, really? I assumed older.
It's not a retirement community.
It's not.
I mean, a little bit. Puerto Vallarta is very much a retirement community. But at any rate, they're the kinds of entrepreneurs there. They have like lifestyle businesses where they wanted to kite surf on Tuesday at 3 p.m. And I wasn't interested in kite surfing on Tuesday at 3 p.m. We could do that on Saturday. But during the week, it's all killer, no filler. Like I'm trying to build something here.
Yeah.
And I am building something here. Whereas they were trying to have a business that afforded them the kind of life they didn't live to work. They worked to live. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it wasn't my community is the point. So I currently live in Guadalajara. There's community. Community not insofar as there's, expats that are building 8 and 9 figure businesses. But there's regular everyday people who are really focused on their work and more importantly, their family. There's a lot. I have we've only been there for less than 6 months and we've already got a group of people that share our values. They've got young kids like we do, and we get to spend all the time away from business with people that are at the same stage of life as us and value the same sorts of things.
When you look at any research on living a good life, community, relationships, enduring relationships are like one of the number one domains. I've heard from a lot of people like, yeah, I want to go live somewhere else. Like, these aspirational dreams, yet the reality of doing it, as you would know, it's challenging, riddled with fear and uncertainty. And a lot of it is like, I don't have family, I don't have friends, I don't have a community. How did you go about finding a community? Like in a foreign country that you probably didn't know anyone when you got there.
Yeah, good question. You get out of your comfort zone a little bit. Go to the meetups. They're not hard to find, whether it's Facebook groups, and if you're just present, you can start to, cafes and things like that. You start to run into people that
it's coffee dates again.
Exactly. Yeah, you start to cross paths with people that you think you might have some affinity with. Yeah, okay, simple as that.
Yeah. So you're building this company, Thirdsy, right? Am I saying it right?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, Thirdsy. What was it about Thirdsy, the mission, the purpose of that you and your wife were like, all right, this is it. We're putting all our cards in, all killer, no filler.
Yeah. It was solving our own problem. My wife and I were sort of everyday athletes. She used to be a CrossFit coach, so she's a better athlete than I am. I'm a very mediocre CrossFit athlete, but at any rate,
you got a good coach though.
Yeah, and I know she wants the best for me. So we were solving our own problem. Like these folks that are sort of everyday athlete, and we've got folks that use our product that are 6-time games CrossFit Games Masters champions. So like Hall of Fame level athletes. We've got Olympic athletes, but most of the people that use our product aren't Olympic athletes. Not surprising because they're quite rare. They're sort of everyday athletes, people who demand something from themselves each and every day, whether it's physically, mentally, like on the job with their family, etc. And that's who we were. And we had a particular, like, I certainly had the issue, like I needed to sleep better, recover better. I was demanding a lot of myself physically and mentally. And my wife had the capability to solve the problem. She's a biochem expert. She's got an undergrad in biochem. She's a chiropractic doctor. Her practice focused on nutrition and wellness. So not only did she, crack people's backs, but she also helped them with their nutrition and overall health. So she had a background and a capability in solving this problem. So particularly during COVID, we were, under a lot of stress. We were still training hard. We had like all kinds of gym equipment spread all over our dining room. Um, and so we're pushing hard, under a lot of stress, not recovering particularly well. Folks that are in this space, they're tracking their sleep oftentimes with, an Aura, Whoop, Garmin. And, you wake up in the morning, you're 62% recovered and I'll train anyway. And you're not really making progress because you make progress when you recover from the stress. And we weren't doing that effectively. And so my wife started experimenting with different natural compounds that could improve and increase your recovery. And she formulated something that was incredibly effective for the two of us. And as we're sort of casting about for what itch are we going to scratch, it became increasingly obvious that this was the thing. This was the novel, unique value that she and I were positioned to offer the world.
Wow. So she designed and created this.
Yeah. All in our home, like experimenting with the core compounds that are in the formula that we've got today.
Yeah. Wow. Smart lady.
Yeah. I'm very fortunate. She's a incredibly intelligent and capable partner in all respects.
Yeah. So you guys, Guadalajara, you're building this life. When you enter this chapter of your life with Third Z, Guadalajara, community, all the lived experience, which I think is required, it is required to get you to where you are today. When you sit back in this purple chair in this hotel room, when you think about what is a good life, how would you answer that?
I think we've alluded to this, Sean, and we've talked about it, off air. When I was a younger fella, filling up the trophy case was, I thought, the key to a life that was worthwhile, a life that perhaps other people would think was worthwhile. And, over time, that shifted, and I started to orient myself towards setting the direction internally rather than externally. And the direction that I've been setting more recently is being useful. I've got modest gifts. I've got some gifts. They're not, almost none of them are best in the world at anything that I do. But I've got a collection of gifts, and I've got some time in this body on this earth. How can I make it sounds so trite and cheesy, but it truly is the way that I feel. Like, how can I make the world a little bit better each and every day? How do I leave the places? How do I leave the people that I interact with just a little bit better? And I'm not perfect. Like, I mess it up all the time. I mess it up all the time.
You're human.
But I aim that way.
Yeah.
And aiming in the right direction, more likely to achieve my ends rather than have somebody else lead me around saying, this is where you should aim. I now set the course.
Yeah.
And I often miss the mark, but I try to hit it.
I really like that answer. I come from the financial world too, and this isn't restricted to the financial world, but it seems like sometimes we get into industries and we hop in this boat, like a jet speed boat, trying to just bust our asses to get to the island that we think is paradise. And your story really speaks to the importance of actually, I think, getting in that boat and hitting the bumps and bruises and the recalibration. So we get to have that internal conversation, meet fear in the eyes, and then intentionally change course directions towards an island. And what I really like about your story, and I'm curious what you think, is it's not like you had this intense investment banking world. It's not like you just quit and laid on the beach. You still sound like it's all killer, no filler, but it's this idea of reorientation that I'm really taking away from our conversation, and the power of having that self-efficacy, or that ability to be like, I control this damn boat and I'm going to keep the throttle down now.
Yeah, that's right. I started to approach the island. Like, I got to the tippity top, and there were, I was working on that promotion, and it wasn't as if it wasn't met with enthusiasm. They're like, yeah, please come. We're ready. And you start to get closer and closer, and you start to, the people that are already there start to come into a little bit sharper focus, and you're like, oh,
Whoopsie.
yeah, they haven't gotten the comfort, or they haven't slayed the dragons that I knew were leading me, that were the shadows that continued to be problematic for the kind, like the where I aimed, where the kinds of, how I established my relationships and maintained my relationships, things like that. I could see that they were still seeking to fill their trophy cases, and that it was kind of empty. It was a bit empty, and that's not to a man. That's not every single.
No, yeah.
Of course, there was, but the point that I'm making isn't that some sort of character slag. The point I'm making is I realized that even if you achieve that, you can still have or not have these issues. And so what I realized was this wasn't going to address this dragon, this underlying dissatisfaction. The solution lay somewhere else. So it was a goal that wasn't going to serve me.
Yeah, that's that. I like that point. A goal is not going to serve me, because I don't want to speak ill will of this island, because some people might, they love that island. That's great. But your point, it's not going to serve me.
Yeah. I thought the island was the goal. The island is not. That's the putting more of a finer point on it. I thought the island was the goal, and I realized that the people that were on the island, either they could have or not have what I was seeking.
Yeah.
So the island wasn't the destination.
Yeah. Perhaps a richer life on the other way, richer beyond what I'm talking about money. I'm curious. We all have a relationship with money, whether we realize that we actually have a relationship with money, and it's like a long-standing one. Like, you can't divorce that relationship. You can't run from it. You can only change. I wonder if you, again, in hindsight, have a different relationship with money, or if you can conceptualize what it looked like during the investment banking days versus today.
Sure. I think that started to change as I got a little bit more senior, but certainly when I was more junior in investment banking, I came from a family that didn't have a lot of money, so didn't really understand it particularly well. I don't think I recognized it I didn't regard it as a tool. Today I regard it as a tool for solving certain problems. Money problems. Money solves money problems. It doesn't solve all problems, but it solves some money problems. And my family didn't have any money, so they didn't solve money problems with money. So I didn't learn that. And so when I was younger and more junior in investment banking, I started to get a little bit of money. I used it actually to solve emotional problems rather than money problems. And the way I did that was, seek status, the way that we were talking about before. You'd upgrade your suits from Hugo Boss to bespoke, and your car became fancier, and your street address became fancier, because I was trying to solve, fill a hole that money doesn't really solve. So as I realized that that wasn't working, I started to regard it more as a tool for solving money problems. And it's a resource that you can use here and now to solve those types of problems. And when it's not being deployed to solve those kinds of problems and improve the actual quality of your life instead of wear labels or whatever else it is that I used to do, it should be treated as a scarce resource for future use for your family and people that rely on you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that. Yeah, it's tricky, hey? But it seems like when we do this self-exploration in ourselves, we start to become more clear that it is a tool. Because we always hear money is a tool, but it's kind of like the compassion on the wall.
Yeah.
It might be there. We might say money's a tool, and you're just like, okay, buy this, buy this, buy this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So we, my family, my wife and I, we use money to make our eliminate day-to-day frictions where we can. This is a silly little example, but we just flew back from LAX. We're visiting family down in California, and we didn't fly business class, but we did buy 3 seats for, we got an 18-month-old toddler. He could have flown for free on our lap, but we bought him an extra seat. So instead of sitting in business class for the two of us with a toddler stomping on our laps, we bought 3 seats. So it certainly isn't extravagant. It's not fancy. It was a small incremental expense, and we used money to make our 5 hours in flight just that much more comfortable.
Quite a bit. Anyone who's flown with an under 2-year-old will know that. As we come and land this plane, or maybe the boat in this conversation, talk about the 18-month, your father.
Mhm.
What does being a father mean to you in this idea of a good life?
The thing I think about with respect to being a father is the immense responsibility that I have to my children to make them into the people that they need to be to navigate the world. So I'm trying to make my son into the man that I think he needs to be, using my flawed wisdom and logic to prepare him for the world. And I think, when I was a younger father, I got 2 daughters from my first marriage, and my daughters are 11 and 12 now. I think when I was an earlier father, I tried to protect them from discomfort far more than I do with my 18-month-old. And that, I think that's nearsighted. Ultimately,
I struggle with that too, though.
yeah,
It's like, I want to fix things for them,
Yeah.
for my kid.
Nobody wants to see their kids struggle, right?
No,
But it starts with, little insidious things like, you're feeding them the food that they prefer instead of the food that that they should eat. And then it moves on to
eating. Yeah.
sleeping habits and tying their shoes and getting dressed. And then eventually you've got bigger kids who struggle with bigger problems. So yeah, I think about that. So, having a good life, I want my children to have a good life. I want my children to be resilient. I want my children to be prepared for the world as it is, not as I can curate it for them, because I won't always be there. So I think about preparing them for the responsibility of preparing them for the world as it is. Yeah.
What's the biggest lesson being a father taught you?
That I'm a servant. I'm there to serve them, and it's, the truth is it's easier to just feed them whatever they want, but it serves me today.
Feed them the corn pops.
Yeah. But less crying that way.
Yeah. But you're right. It's just our jobs, I think, are to help guide them, and sometimes that's not even the corn pops.
Yeah. And if you think of the context of being a servant over the fullness of their time under your stewardship, whether that's 16, 18, 26 years old, doesn't matter when, but you have some influence over them over the, their time that they're becoming young adults or adults. What's best for them over the entirety of that period is not what's easiest for you today. So you're a servant to them, not to serve them today. You're not serving them the corn pops.
Yeah.
You're serving them over the duration of that period, where you're helping them become the person that you hope and wish that they become, to thrive and have a good, meaningful life over time.
As a dad, thank you for that. I like that framing, a servant. Yeah. 2 more questions here. If you were writing an autobiography of your life, and you had to write this chapter starting today forward, what do you think the title would be?
Oh my, really putting me on the spot here, Sean. Oh, I don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Violence? So you're going to say, what? Violence? That doesn't sound like anything we talked about. The modest successes, my little trophy cabinet, the modest successes I've had have come from a violent focus of my attention. I don't do well dabbling. I don't do well like, we'll get back to this and let's network on that or workshop this idea. That's not the way I've been able to accomplish anything. The way that I've accomplished virtually everything in my life is a violent approach. Head on, face the problem. What are we doing? What am I doing about it? How can I move the needle? How can I solve this problem? How can I make this matter, leave it better than, than it is today? Violence. It's never a gradual, incremental approach for me. Violent application of my modest gifts is the only way I've ever been able to accomplish anything that I think is that I'm proud of.
Your words, all killer, no filler.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So let's now imagine you're at end of life. Doesn't matter how old you are. You're sitting on a front porch, looking out at a view, perhaps Mexico or downtown Toronto, that brings you complete peace, ease, and contentment. And you decide to write a letter to your children's children on what you learned was a key to living a meaningful life. What would be a theme to that letter?
Oh, you know what? I gave to my children this year something that we drafted this past summer, and we mounted it and framed it, and it's called the Luchini Creed.
Wow.
Yeah, we took a lot of pleasure putting it together. And so I already know what, there's like 18 premises in this creed. But it ends, so I'll tell you how it begins and it ends. I'll give you the bookends rather than all the gory detail in between. It starts with, these are the goods we aim towards. And we often fall short, but if we aim true, we more often than not will have the sort of positive outcomes and impacts that we're seeking to. So that's sort of the starting premise. Then it goes through the 18 premises of this creed. And then it ends with, and this sounds a bit morbid, but death is a certainty. So memento mori, remember your mortality. And the reason that we aim for these things, the reason that we try to live our life in accordance with these values, is that our time here is, it's temporal, it's finite, it isn't forever. So you might as well use your time well. That's the idea. So, aiming true, aiming upward, and doing so because it all ends. You gotta push your chips all into the middle at the end anyway. So you might as well do good along the way.
I love that. Yeah, this time it's so limited. When you're pushing those chips in, you might as well violently do them. Like,
do it violently. And when you get to, you're probably a little younger than me, but you get to sort of that midlife age, and you start
40.
Yeah. So you start to get a little gray in your beard, and you start to see the wrinkles around your eyes in the mirror, and you go, oh my goodness, like those weren't there just a little while ago, and you start to really appreciate how quickly it goes. And it instead of buying a sports car, I quit my job and moved to Mexico.
You get one chance at this life. One song to sing. You might as well belt it out.
Got it.
Adam, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. I love this theme of doing the work to find ourselves and then not slowing down. Just keep the throttle going, but towards that island that you chose.
Thanks so much, Sean. This was great. Uncovered some stuff for me that I haven't revisited in a little while. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share it with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thirdzy, for listeners, how do we sleep better? Where do we go?
THIRDZY.com. Deep sleep and deeper recovery. So it does both help you rest your mind and your body, as well as build your body overnight, which no other sleep supplement on the market does.
You get it online?
Get it online.
Okay. Thank you so much. We'll include that in the show notes.
Awesome.
And again, thank you so much.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in this week to the You Potential Podcast. I really enjoyed that conversation with Adam. I feel like it hit on this important thing, this idea of what happens when you do all the things you're supposed to do to be happy, to be successful, but it doesn't really feel like enough. This idea, enough, it's important to me, understanding when is enough, while on the same side, understanding that it's important to strive for something. That's what I thought was unique about Adam's story, is he's still pushing himself. He's still creating a new company, working hard, but it's on his own terms. And that gets me thinking about satisfaction. It seems to me that Adam is now satisfied. That doesn't mean he's not working, sitting on the beach doing nothing. No, he's satisfied in the work that he's doing, the work that he's building right now. This leaves me for my question this week. Where in your life, in my life, might we still be chasing the trophies that aren't actually giving us what we're hoping for? If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.